The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, and 3,000 alien faces turned to stare at me at once. My name is Oliver Grant, and I had just ruined the most important moment of my life. The glowing purple wine, worth more than my entire yearly scholarship, now soaked the silver gown of Princess Zyrina of the Velker Dominion. Her crystal skin shimmered with rage. Her 4 eyes locked onto me like weapons. I was 19 years old. I was the only human at the Stellar Concordat Academy, and I had just poured ancient royal wine on a princess whose family had ruled half the galaxy for 6,000 years. "You clumsy little creature," she said. Her voice sounded like ice cracking on a frozen lake. The whole grand hall went silent. Even the floating servant drones stopped moving. "Do you even understand what you have done?" I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. My throat had gone completely dry. Around me, students from 100 different worlds watched and waited. Some looked shocked, some looked amused. Most looked like they were watching a small animal about to be crushed under a boot. The ambassadors at the high table leaned forward. The academy masters on the side platform stood frozen, and at the back of the hall I caught a glimpse of my mentor, old Orin Vass, the ancient Ethari archivist who had taken me under his wing. His pale golden eyes were not angry, they were something worse. They were worried. "I'm sorry, Your Highness," I finally managed to say. My voice sounded too small in the huge hall. "It was an accident. I tripped on the edge of the carpet." Princess Zyrina tilted her head slowly, the way a hunting bird studies a rabbit. "An accident," she repeated, then she laughed. Her laugh was not a kind laugh. It was sharp and cold in public. It was made to be heard by everyone, and slowly, like a wave moving through the hall, other people began to laugh too. Her court officials laughed first, then the visiting nobles, then the students, even some of the academy masters allowed small smiles to cross their faces. I stood there in the middle of the shining floor holding an empty tray, while 3,000 beings laughed at me. "Look at it," the princess said to her advisor, a tall creature with silver skin and 6 arms. "This is what they send us now. This is the great hope of Earth." A clumsy little ape in a borrowed uniform. "They told us humans would surprise us, and indeed I am surprised. I did not know a species could produce something so useless." The laughter grew louder. Something inside me shifted. I had been humiliated before. I had been called names my whole life at the academy. I had been pushed, mocked, and ignored for 2 years, but this was different. This was not just about me. The princess was not just laughing at Oliver Grant, the poor scholarship student from a small town in Colorado. She was laughing at every single human being who had ever lived. She was laughing at my mother, who had worked 3 jobs to help pay for my travel papers. She was laughing at my grandfather, who had taught me how to stand tall when others tried to push me down. My hand tightened around the empty tray. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. "Your Highness," I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice came out. "I offered you an apology. I meant it, but I will not stand here and let you insult my people." The laughter stopped. Every face turned back to me. Princess's 4 eyes narrowed into thin lines. Her advisor stepped forward, ready to defend her honor, but she raised one hand and he stopped. "What did you just say to me, creature?" I said, I repeated louder now, that I will not stand here while you insult my people. I am sorry for the wine. I am not sorry for being human. A sound moved through the hall. It was not laughter anymore. It was something colder. Every being in the room knew what had just happened. An apprentice had challenged a royal, and in the ancient law of the Concordat, such a challenge could not be ignored. The princess rose slowly from her chair. She was nearly 7 feet tall, her crystal skin catching the light from 1,000 floating lamps. She walked down the steps of the high platform, one careful step at a time, until she stood directly in front of me. She was so close I could smell the sweet, metallic scent of her people. "Very well, little ape," she whispered. "If you wish to speak like a warrior, then you will fight like one. In 7 days, you and I will meet in the grand circle. You will bring a blade, I will bring mine, and we will see if your pride is as strong as your tongue." I heard gasps around the hall. Ritual combat between a royal and an apprentice was almost unheard of. Everyone knew what it meant. It meant she planned to destroy me publicly. "I accept," I said. The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. The princess smiled then, and it was the most frightening thing I had ever seen. "Good," she said softly. "Good, then. Enjoy your last 7 days, human. I will make sure the entire galaxy watches what happens to those who speak to their betters." She turned and walked back to her seat. The reception continued, but nothing was the same. People whispered, people pointed. I was led out of the hall by 2 academy guards, and my face burned the whole way. That night I could not sleep. I sat on the edge of my small bed in the apprentice wing, staring at the holographic stars outside my window. My hands were still shaking. What had I done? I was going to die in 7 days. The Velcor were the greatest warriors in the known galaxy. Their royal family had not lost a duel in 300 years. I had never even held a real blade outside of training class. My door chimed softly. When it slid open, Orin Vass was standing there. The old Athari was thin and tall, with pale skin like paper and long silver hair that fell to his waist. He had been my mentor for 2 years, and in all that time he had never once come to my room. He walked in slowly and sat on the small chair by my desk. For a long time he said nothing. "You are afraid," he finally said. "This is good." "Good," I laughed, but it came out broken. "I'm going to die, Orin Vass. I just challenged a princess who has been training for combat since before I was born." "You did not challenge her," he said. "She challenged you. There is a difference." "It doesn't matter. I'll still be just as defeated in 7 days." He looked at me then with those strange golden eyes. The look lasted a long time. It made me feel like he was seeing through my skin, through my bones, into something deeper. "Oliver," he said quietly, "tell me, when she laughed at you tonight, what did you feel?" I thought about it. Angry, embarrassed. No, before that, deeper. I closed my eyes. I remembered the moment her laugh had rippled through the hall. I remembered the faces of 3,000 beings turning toward me. I remembered how something in my chest had gone very still and very cold. I felt, I said slowly, like I was watching myself from far away, like something inside me was waking up and watching. Orin Vass nodded. "That," he said, "is what I feared and what I hoped." "What do you mean?" He stood up, he walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Oliver, there are things about your species that even your species does not know, things that were hidden long ago. For very good reasons, I have watched you for 2 years. I have watched you grow. I have watched you endure the cruelty of these halls without breaking. And tonight I watched you do something that no human has done in this academy's history. You stood up. I stood up and got a death sentence, I said. He turned to face me. Perhaps, he said, or perhaps something else entirely. Listen to me carefully now, because we do not have much time. In 7 days you will walk into that arena. You will face the princess. And you must not try to win the way her warriors try to win. Then how should I try to win? He smiled, and for the first time in 2 years I saw something almost like hope in his ancient face. You must try to win the way your grandfathers' grandfathers once won. You must try to remember something you have never been taught. I don't understand. You will, he said, when the moment comes you will. Now sleep, Oliver Grant, sleep while you still can, for in 7 days the galaxy will see something it has not seen in a very long time. He left without saying anything else. I lay back on mine and stared at the ceiling. Outside my window, the stars of 100 worlds burned in the dark. And somewhere deep inside me, something that had been sleeping for a very long time began to stir. 7 days. 7 days until the princess and I met in the grand circle. 7 days until everything changed. I did not sleep that night. I tried. I closed my eyes. I counted backward. I thought about home. Nothing worked. Every time my thoughts drifted close to rest, the princess's laugh came back to me, sharp and cold and cutting. By the time the morning bells rang across the academy grounds, I had made up my mind about one thing. I was not going to spend the next 7 days hiding in my room. If I was going to face her, then I was going to face her on my feet. And I was going to use every hour I had left to learn, to prepare, and to remember whatever it was that old Orin Vash thought I could remember. I got dressed. I splashed cold water on my face, and I walked out into the morning where the whole academy was already whispering my name. The news had traveled fast. By the time I reached the training halls, everyone knew. Students stopped talking when I walked by. Masters looked at me with something between pity and curiosity. Someone had written a message in glowing letters across the wall of the main courtyard. It said in the common tongue of the Concordat, the ape has 7 days to live. I did not stop walking. I did not turn my head. I walked straight to the training halls, and I began to prepare. The first day had begun, and somewhere on the other side of the academy, Princess Zyraneth was preparing too. But she was not the only one watching me. Now, in the shadows of the great spires, in the private rooms of ambassadors, places I could not see, other eyes had begun to turn in my direction. Eyes much older and much more dangerous than any princess. The training halls of the stellar Concord Academy were carved from white stone and filled with equipment from 1,000 different worlds. I had spent 2 years in these halls learning the basics of combat from masters who barely hid their doubt that a human could ever truly fight. I had been told I was too slow, too soft, too short-lived to master any real discipline. But today, when I walked through the tall doors, no one laughed. The first master I approached was Grand Master Velik, an old warrior from the Draxon Reach with thick gray skin and 3 strong arms. He had taught me blade work for 2 years. He had also told me more than once that I should consider a career in diplomacy instead of combat. Today, he looked at me differently. So, he said slowly, the human who challenged a royal come to ask me for miracles, have you? No, master, I said, I've come to ask for the truth. In 7 days I will face her. I know I am not her equal. I know her people are the greatest warriors in the galaxy, but I want to know one thing. Is there any way at all, that I can survive? He looked at me for a long moment. Then very slowly, the 3-armed master began to smile. Oliver Grant, he said, I have been teaching in these halls for 140 years. And in all that time, I have never once heard a student ask me that question in that way. Come with me. I think perhaps there is something I can show you after all. He led me deeper into the training halls, past the main floors, down a long staircase I had never seen before, to a small, quiet room where an old practice blade rested on a wooden stand. The blade was plain, simple, nothing like the glowing weapons the other students used. This blade, Master Velik said, was given to me by my own teacher many years ago. She told me to keep it until I found a student who needed it more than I did. I never found such a student until perhaps today. He picked it up. He held it out to me. Take it, he said, and come back tomorrow. We have work to do. I took the blade. It felt right in my hand, heavier than I expected, but balanced, honest. The second day was about to begin, and 7 days, I was starting to realize, might just be enough. The Grand Circle was built to hold 50,000 watchers, and on the morning of the 7th day, not a single seat was empty. Beings from every corner of the Concordat had come to watch what the galaxy was already calling the humans folly. Betting houses on 300 worlds had set the odds. No one was betting on me, not one single soul. I stood in the waiting chamber beneath the arena, listening to the crowd roar. Above me, my hands were steady now. They had not been steady 6 days ago, but 6 days of training with Master Velik had changed something. 6 days of sleeping, only 3 hours a night, of running through forms until my body remembered them without thinking, of listening to Orin Vash whisper old words in my ear that I did not understand but somehow felt. The door to the arena opened. The light poured in, and I walked out to meet the princess, who had laughed at me. She was waiting in the center of the circle, dressed in full ceremonial battle crystal. Her armor caught the light of the twin suns above and threw it back in rainbows. Her blade was long and curved, and sang softly in the air, the way Velker royal weapons were said to sing. Before a duel, she looked like a goddess of war. I looked like a boy with a plain sword. The crowd went wild when they saw us, but as I walked forward I noticed something strange. High up in the private boxes, there were figures I had never seen before. 7 of them. They were cloaked in deep black. They sat perfectly still, and even from the center of the arena, I could feel their eyes on me. Orin Vass had told me they might come. I had not believed him. Now I did. The announcer's voice boomed across the circle, speaking the old words of ritual combat. Princess Zyranith raised her blade. I raised mine. The bell sounded, and she came at me like a storm. Her first strike was meant to end it. Immediately, a royal killing blow, that kind her family had used for centuries. It came so fast that the crowd gasped. But something in me moved before I could think. I stepped back. I turned. Her blade passed through the air where I had been a half-second before. She stopped. She looked at me surprised. "Lucky," she said. She came again, faster this time. Her blade sang through 7 positions in less than 2 seconds. I did not block them. I could not. My sword was not fast enough for that, but I moved. I moved the way Master Velik had taught me. I moved the way Orin Vass had whispered. I did not try to be better than her. I tried to be different. I tripped deliberately. I fell to one knee. Her blade passed over my head. I rolled. I came up behind her. She spun, but I was already moving again. Not toward her, but away, toward the edge of the circle where the sand was loose and her heavy armor would slow her down. She followed. She had to follow. The crowd's cheering had changed. It was not a cheer of excitement anymore. It was a cheer of confusion. They had come to see me defeated quickly. They were now watching something they did not understand. Princess Zarina understood it, though. "Stop running, creature," she said, breathing harder now. "Fight me like a warrior." "I am fighting you," I said, "just not like one of yours." She roared and came at me, and this time I did something no one expected. I dropped my blade. The crowd gasped. She lunged, certain of victory now. Her blade aimed at my heart, and I caught her wrist with my bare hand. The whole arena went silent, dead. Silent, not a breath, not a whisper. 50,000 beings stared in total shock as a human apprentice held a Velker Royal's blade arm frozen in midair. Her 4 eyes went wide. "Impossible," she whispered. I did not throw her. I did not strike. Sorry. I simply held her there, and I looked into her eyes, and I said very quietly, so that only she could hear, "I could have struck you when you first came at me. I didn't. I could strike you. Now I won't. Your Highness, I am not your enemy. I never was, but I will not be laughed at again." I let go of her wrist. I stepped back. I picked up my blade. I sheathed it. Then I bowed, and I walked out of the grand circle, leaving Princess Zarina standing in the sand, her blade still raised, her eyes still wide, and 50,000 beings still staring in absolute silence. It was not until I reached the waiting chamber that the crowd finally found its voice. The sound that came then was not cheering, it was not booing, it was something else entirely. It was the sound of a galaxy realizing that something it thought it understood had just changed forever. And high in the private boxes, the 7 cloaked figures rose from their seats. They did not speak. They did not look at each other. They simply turned one by one and began to walk toward the chamber where I now stood. Toward me. The hunters had come. I did not know they were called the hunters, not yet. I only knew that as I sat in the quiet waiting chamber, trying to catch my breath, trying to understand what had just happened in the grand circle. 7 figures stepped through the doorway and filled the room with a kind of cold silence I had never felt before. They were tall, all of them taller than the princess, taller than most species I had ever seen. They wore dark cloaks that hid their faces, and they moved without a sound, as if the floor itself did not want to disturb them. The first one pulled back his hood. I had never seen a creature like him. His face was made of hard plates like the shell of some great insect, and he had 7 eyes arranged in a half circle across his forehead. Each eye was a different color, and each one was fixed on me. "Oliver Grant," he said. His voice was deep and slow like stones grinding together. "My name is V. Horrocks the Unbroken. For 400 years I have hunted the prey of kings. I have never failed a contract, not once. 7 days ago a king paid me a great deal of wealth to come here and end your life. I came to accept the contract. I came to study my prey." My throat went dry. I could not move. But then very slowly the 7-eyed hunter did something that made every hunter behind him stiffen in shock. He bent his head just slightly. It was the smallest bow I had ever seen, but it was a bow. "I refuse the contract," V. Horrocks said. "And every hunter in my pack refuses it. With me, we will not hunt you, Oliver Grant. We will not hunt any of your kind, not now, not ever again." The hunters behind him made a sound like wind through stone. It was the sound of agreement. I opened my mouth. No words came out. V. Horrocks stepped closer. The other hunters stayed by the door, still as statues. He looked down at me with all 7 of his eyes, and his voice dropped low. "When you dropped your blade in the circle," he said, "when you caught her wrist but chose not to strike, I saw something I have not seen in a very, very long time, something I had hoped I would never see again." "What did you see?" I whispered. He was silent for a long moment. "I saw a ghost," he said. "I saw the shadow of a species I fought beside long ago in a war so old that your kind has forgotten it ever happened. I saw the thing that makes your people dangerous. Not your strength, not your weapons. Something else, something worse. I don't understand." "No," V. Horrocks said, "you do not yet. But you will. Go to your mentor, Oliver Grant. Go to the old Athari who watches over you. Ask him about the silent war. Ask him what your kind did at the battle of Kta Tran, and then perhaps you will understand why the 7 of us will not raise a blade against you, and why no hunter who remembers the old times ever will again." He stepped back. He pulled his hood over his face, and one by one all 7 of them turned and walked out of the chamber as silently as they had come. I sat alone in the empty room for a long time. When I finally stood up, my legs were shaking, not from fear anymore, from something else, something that felt like a door opening inside my mind, a door I had not known was there. I walked out of the arena. I walked through the long marble halls. I walked past the students who stared at me now with open mouths and wide eyes. I walked past the masters who bowed their heads. As I passed, something none of them had ever done before. I walked until I reached the old tower, where Orenvask kept his private library. And when I pushed open the door, the old Athari was already waiting for me. He was sitting in his chair. He had a pot of tea steaming on the small table, 2 cups. He had known I would come. "Sit down, Oliver," he said quietly. "It is time you learn who you really are." I sat down, and the ancient archivist of the Stellar Concordat Academy began to tell me a story that no human had heard in 10,000 years. Long ago, Orenvask began before your Earth had even grown its first forests. Before most of the species in this galaxy had learned to write, there was a war. It was the greatest war this galaxy has ever known. It was called the Silent War, because in the end it left so much of The galaxy silent, empty, dead. He poured the tea. His hands were steady, mine were not. The enemy was not a species as we understand species. They were called the devourers of Cathar Atram. They were a hunger, a living hunger that moved. Between the stars, they consumed worlds. They consumed whole civilizations. They consumed light itself, every ancient species you know today, every great empire in the Concordat, every proud king and queen, all of them fought the devourers, all of them lost. He looked up at me. Except for one. Humans, I whispered. He nodded slowly. Humans, he said, but not as you know. Them, not the humans of Earth, the humans of the old times. They came from somewhere far away, somewhere we have never been able to find again. They arrived in ships made of things we did not understand. They had no great empire, they had no vast numbers, but they had something else. They had something no other species had ever shown. What? The ability to change, he said. Ability to adapt, to learn faster than the devourers could consume, to fight in ways that made no sense, to lose a battle and come back stronger, to lose a world and build a new weapon. They did not fight the devourers with greater numbers. They did not fight them with greater technology. They fought them with something the galaxy had never seen, a kind of living, breathing, endless willingness to endure. I felt cold. They won, Orenvac said. After a war that lasted 10,000 of your years, they won, and the devourers were pushed back into the dark places between the stars. Your ancestors saved this galaxy. Oliver, every species that lives today owes its life to what your kind did. Then why, I asked, why does no one know? Why do they treat us like children? He sighed, the sigh of someone who had been waiting a very long time to say what he was about to say. Because, he said, after the war your ancestors did something that terrified the galaxy even more than the devourers had. What? They looked at what they had become, at what they had been forced to become to win that war, and they were afraid. Afraid of themselves, afraid of the thing that lived inside them. They knew that if they remained as they were, they might one day become something the galaxy needed saving from, so they made a choice that no other species in history has ever made. He paused. They chose to forget. I could not speak. They took their people, Orenvac continued, and they seated them on a single quiet world, Earth. They stripped away their memories, they stripped away their technology, they buried everything. They had been deep inside the blood of their children, and they agreed by pact with the elder species of the galaxy that Earth would be left alone, quarantined, watched, but never touched, never provoked, never awakened. Until now, I whispered. Until now, he agreed. Until you. Oliver Grant, a scholarship student from a small town on a small world, stood in front of a princess and refused to be laughed at until you caught a royal blade with your bare hand and chose in that moment not to strike. Those are not the actions of a simple apprentice. Those are the actions of someone who is beginning to wake up. I stood up. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Orenvac, are you telling me that I am? I am telling you, he said gently, that something inside you is remembering, and I am telling you that you are not the only one. There are signs, small signs across Earth. Children who know things they were never taught adults who dream in languages that have not been spoken in 10,000 years. The long sleep is ending, Oliver. It is ending slowly, but it is ending. And the princess's father, the Velcour king, he sent the hunters because he knows the old stories. His people are one of the few who still remember. He felt what everyone in that hall felt tonight, a stirring in echo. He sent the hunters not to silence you. Out of anger, he sent them out of fear. He was hoping they would end this before it began, before more humans began to wake. I sat back down heavily. The room felt like it was spinning. What happens now? I asked. Now, Orin Vass said, the galaxy will react. The Concordat will call a summit. Every great power will demand to know what you are. Some will want to study you, some will want to hide you, some will want you removed quietly before more of your kind begin to remember. The choices you make in the next few days, Oliver, will shape not only your life but the future of every human being who ever lives. That's not fair, I whispered. No, he said, it is not, but it is real, and you will face it because no one else can. I looked at the old archivist. He had been my mentor for 2 years. I had thought in all that time that I had been lucky to have him. Now I understood he had not been lucky to find me. He had been sent to find me by someone or something that had known I was coming. Orin Vass, I said, how long have you known what I was? He smiled. It was a small, sad smile. Since the first day you walked into my library, he said. I felt it then. Small thing, a flicker, but I felt it. And I have been waiting for this night ever since. He reached across the table and put his thin hand on mine. Rest now, Oliver, he said. Tomorrow the summit begins, and you will need every bit of yourself to walk into that room. I nodded. I stood. I walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back. Orin Vass, I said, the hunter V. Horrocks. He said he had fought beside us before. Is that true? Did he really fight in the silent war? The old archivist's golden eyes grew distant. V. Horrocks the Unbroken is the last of his pack who remembers, he said softly. He was young then, very young, but yes, he stood with your ancestors at the gates of Cathar Tran. He saw what they did. He saw what it cost them. And he swore on that day that he would never raise his blade against your kind again. Then he was not afraid of me, I said. In that chamber. No, Orin Vass said, he was not afraid of you. He was honoring a promise he made 10,000 years ago to people whose faces he has never forgotten and whose names he still whispers in the dark. I closed the door softly behind me, and I walked back to my room through a galaxy that suddenly felt very, very different than it had just a few hours before. The summit was called for 3 days later, and when it came, it was the largest gathering of galactic powers in 1,000 years. Every major species sent representatives. The Velcour Dominion came with a full royal delegation led by the king himself, an ancient crystalline giant whose eyes held centuries of war. The Draxon Reach sent its first speaker. The Athari sent their entire high council, something that had not happened in living memory. Even the silent HFY, who rarely left their home worlds, sent 3 robed diplomats who spoke through breathing machines. I sat in the center of it all. I was 19 years old. I was wearing the simple gray robes of an academy apprentice because Orin Vass had told me to. He had said, let them see what you Or let them see the apprentice, let them see the boy, then let them decide. The summit hall was a great circular chamber, and every seat around its edges was filled. Princess Tsarina sat with her father's delegation, but she did not look at me the same way anymore. The cold laughter was gone from her face. In its place was something I could not name, something quieter, something more careful. V. Horax and his 6 hunters stood at the back of the hall. They had not been invited. No one had asked them to leave. Even kings and queens, I was learning, did not ask the hunters to leave. The first speaker of the Concordat rose. Her name was Ariel Hartwell, a rare human diplomat who had spent 40 years representing Earth in these halls. She was the most senior human the Concordat had ever allowed. She was also a complete stranger to me, although she looked at me now with an expression that suggested she had been following my story very closely. Honored beings of the Concordat, she said, we have gathered today to discuss a matter of grave importance. 7 days ago, a human apprentice named Oliver Grant defeated Princess Tsarina of the Velker Dominion in ritual combat. He did so without causing her harm. He chose to end the duel with honor, not with violence. Since that day, our hall has received over 300 requests for investigation into him, into his people, into the nature of what occurred in that arena. She paused. She looked around the room. We are here today to answer one question: what is humanity, and what should our response be now that our oldest quiet agreement appears to be changing? The murmurs began immediately. Dozens of voices rose at once, but before they could grow too loud, the Velkor king himself stood up. The hall fell silent. He was nearly 9 ft tall, his crystal skin darker than his daughter's, etched with the scars of 5 centuries of rule. His voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. I will speak first, he said, because it was I who sent the hunters, and it is I who must now speak truth in this hall before all of you. He turned slowly. He looked at me. Oliver Grant of Earth, he said, I sent warriors to end your life. I did this because I feared what you might become. I did this because my ancestors told me in whispers that have passed down through 10,000 years that one day human would wake, and on that day all of us would face a choice we did not want to face. When I heard of what happened in the Grand Circle, I panicked. I acted in fear, and I was wrong. He stepped forward. He bent his head. I apologize, he said, to you, to your people, to this hall. I was wrong. The silence that followed was deeper than anything I had ever heard. No one breathed, no one moved. The king of the Velkor Dominion had just bowed to a human apprentice in front of the entire galaxy. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak. My heart was hammering, but I stood. Your Majesty, I said, and my voice carried in the great chamber, I accept your apology, and I offer you one of my own. I am sorry for the wine I always was. A soft sound moved through the hall. It might have been laughter, the gentle kind, the kind that breaks tension instead of creating it. Princess Tsarina stood up too then. She walked down from her seat. She walked across the great circle. She walked until she stood directly in front of me, just as she had in the grand reception hall on that first terrible night. And then, to the shock of everyone watching, she knelt. The princess of the Velkor Dominion, whose people had not knelt to another species in 6,000 years, lowered herself onto one knee and bent her head. I laughed at you, she said softly. I did not see you. I saw only a creature I could use to make myself feel large. I was a fool, a royal fool, but a fool all the same. I would ask if you will allow it to be counted among your friends and to pledge on behalf of my people that the Velcor Dominion will stand with Earth in whatever is to come. I looked down at her. I thought of my grandfather who had taught me to stand tall. I thought of my mother who had worked 3 jobs so I could come here. I thought of every human who had ever been laughed at, dismissed, ignored by this galaxy of older, prouder species. And I thought more than anything that none of them would have wanted me to be cruel now. Your Highness, I said gently, please stand up. You do not need to kneel to me. None of you do. I am not what you think I am. I am not a weapon. I am not a threat. I am a 19-year-old boy from a small town on a small world, and what my ancestors did long ago in a war none of us remember does not give me the right to demand anything from anyone in this room. I looked around the hall at the kings, at the queens, at the ambassadors and the speakers and the ancient delegations of species older than my entire planet. You are afraid of what we might become, I said, and I understand. After what you have told me, I am afraid too, but fear is not a foundation for anything good. Fear built a lie that lasted 10,000 years. Fear sent hunters to a boy's door. Fear will destroy us all if we let it rule this moment. I took a breath. I stand here today to tell you this. Humanity does not want to be your weapon. We do not want to be your myth. We do not want to rule over anyone. What we want, what we have always wanted, is to be your neighbors. Let us remember ourselves slowly. Let us come back to this galaxy, not as the ghosts of what we were, but as something new. Let us earn our place at your tables, not by the memory of old battles, but by the work of new friendships. The hall was so quiet I could hear the soft hum of the lights above us. If you choose to fear us, I continued, then you will make us what you fear. If you choose to meet us with open hands, then perhaps we can become something this galaxy has never had, not the ghosts of an old war, but the start of a new peace. I sat down. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then at the back of the hall, V. Horrocks, the Unbroken, stepped forward. The 7 hunters moved with him. They walked through the great chamber until they stood in the center of the circle, all around me, facing outward toward the assembled powers of the galaxy. The hunters, V. Horrocks said in that slow, stone-grinding voice, have made our decision. We will not hunt this one. We will not hunt any of his kind, any king, any queen, any great house that attempts to send us against the humans of Earth from this day forward will be refused. This is the law of our pact. This is the promise we make today before all of you, so that no one may claim confusion later. He turned his 7 eyes toward me. Oliver Grant, he said, you did not fight us because you chose peace. We will choose it back. Slowly around the hall, delegation after delegation rose to their feet. The Velcor first, then the Draxan, then the Thari. One by one, every species in the chamber stood in the oldest gesture of respect the Concordat had ever known. Ariel Hartwell, the first speaker, looked at me with tears in her eyes. The quarantine, she said, her voice trembling, is lifted. Earth is welcomed back into the full body of the galaxy. And Oliver Grant, if you will accept it. We would name you humanity's first ambassador at large, the first of what we all hope will be many. I did not know what to say. I just nodded. I did not go home right away. For 3 months I stayed at the academy, walking the same halls I had walked as an apprentice, but walking them now as something else. Ambassador, representative, teacher in a strange way, because everyday students I had barely known now came to my door with questions, not just human questions, questions from 100 species. What are we like? They asked me. What were your ancestors really like? What did they do in the old times? I told them I did not know. I told them the truth. I was still learning. Princess Tsarina became, in a strange and unexpected way, one of my closest friends. We walked the academy gardens together in the evenings. She told me stories of her people. I told her stories of mine. She laughed again in time, but it was a different laugh now. A real one, a warm one. The cold laughter from that first night, I think, was buried in the same place she had buried the version of herself who could laugh that way. Master Velik, who had given me his old teacher's blade, retired from teaching 2 months after the summit. He told me he wanted to spend his remaining years writing a book about what he had learned from his strangest student. He said I was welcome to read it when it was finished, but not before. I laughed and told him I would wait. Vast, the ancient Athari, stayed. He remained my mentor. He remained my friend. On quiet nights he would tell me more stories of the old times, things he had not told me before, things he said he had waited 10,000 years to finally tell someone. And sometimes when I was alone in my room at night, I would feel that stirring again, that door inside my mind opening just a little wider, memories that were not mine rising up like fog from a dark lake, images of places I had never been, faces of people I had never met, a sense of battles I had never fought. The long sleep was ending, slowly, gently, but ending. When I finally went home to that small town in Colorado where my mother still worked 3 jobs and my grandfather still sat on the porch in the evenings, I did not tell them everything. Some things I decided were better understood slowly. Some truths were better told in pieces. But I sat with my grandfather on the porch on my first night back. The stars were coming out above us. He handed me a glass of his old, cheap wine, and I drank it, and it tasted better than anything I had ever been served at any royal reception. So, he said quietly, was it worth it? Going all that way, being the only one of us up there all those years. I thought about it. I thought about the princess laughing in the grand hall. I thought about her kneeling weeks later in the summit chamber. I thought about Vihorexen, his 7 eyes, and about Vasin, his sad, patient smile. I thought about a galaxy that had spent 10,000 years being afraid of us, and that was learning slowly to not be afraid anymore. Yes, I said, it was worth it. He nodded. He looked up at the stars. Good, he said, that's good, son. We sat there for a long time not talking. Above us, the sky grew darker, and the stars grew brighter, and somewhere out there I knew Vihorex, the Unbroken, was sitting in his own quiet place, remembering his old friends, and keeping his old promise. And somewhere deep inside me, in that place that had been sleeping for 10,000 years, something whispered very softly, in a language I had never been taught, but somehow understood. The last to wake is the first to remember why we slept. I closed my eyes. I smiled. And for the first time in my life, I truly understood who I was. The end.